There is a persistent myth that life requires a spark of magic to exist. But if you rewind the clock far enough, you don't find supernatural intervention. You find a continuous chain of thermodynamic and electromagnetic physics. Picture the primordial Earth. It was a chaotic soup of atmospheric gases and water, constantly battered by extreme volcanic heat and millions of lightning strikes. When that immense energy tore through those raw gases, it shattered them, forcing the atoms to recombine into much more complex structures. Specifically, they forged the core chemical building blocks, nucleotides and amino acids. At this stage, we have reached the limit of raw chemistry. Every interaction is dictated by thermal agitation and molecular collision, occurring without biological intent or the concept of survival. Look at these nucleotides drifting in primordial waters. Each carries a distinct positive and negative charge. Because of opposing polarities, they aggressively attract, snapping together end-to-end like magnets. This chain is RNA. Curling into a helix, it becomes the first biological data sequence. RNA naturally multiplies, but it isn't making a conscious decision to reproduce. The sequence simply has exposed electrical charges, which physically pull other free-floating molecules out of the water to lock in right beside it. Replication is often thought of as the defining hallmark of life, yet it began as a completely passive, inevitable physical law of magnetic attraction. Meanwhile, another class of molecules called lipids were forming in this environment. Lipids have a highly specific dual polarity structure. They feature a charged head and a completely uncharged tail. Because water molecules hold a charge, they aggressively repel the uncharged lipid tails. To escape the pressure, the tails cluster inward, packing tightly together to form a sealed spherical bubble, trapping our floating RNA inside. This first cell emerged as a consequence of geometry and fluid dynamics. Thermodynamic water pressure forced these molecules into a closed loop, creating a physical boundary by sheer necessity. Inside that newly formed bubble, amino acids are drawn to the RNA chain, magnetically aligning side by side along its sequence. But when this newly formed chain interacts with the internal water, chaos ensues. The varying positive and negative charges scattered along the amino acids begin to violently push and pull against one another. The internal electromagnetic conflict forces the linear chain to buckle. It rapidly twists and collapses onto itself, locking into a highly specific three-dimensional geometric shape. This folded 3D shape is a protein, a physical nanomachine. Its specific geometry allows it to physically latch onto, slice, or fuse other chemical structures based on how their rigid surfaces interlock. Every internal function of a cell, from repairing damage to absorbing nutrients, is nothing more than the blind, mechanical operation of these geometrically folded protein tools. So how did these isolated, unthinking mechanical tools cross the threshold into communication and eventually into the abstract realm of thought? The process begins with an external physical force, like a sound vibration or a wave of light, physically crashing into the outer wall of a cell. That physical impact causes the cell to violently rupture, ejecting its internally stored calcium atoms outward. It is quite literally a chemical spill. Here is that reaction in sequence. The spilled calcium physically crashes into a neighboring cell's protein receptor, which forces it open, causing that second cell to spill its own calcium in a rapid chain reaction. This relentless domino effect of spilling chemicals is known as an action potential. It serves as the fundamental physical electrical wiring for an entire nervous system. When you scale this concept up to the human brain, you are looking at exactly 86 billion of these interconnected cellular wires. The system operates at a scale where a single visual trigger initiates trillions of these calcium cascades every second, rippling across the entire network in the time it takes to blink. As these trillions of signals intersect, they create a real-time data map of the environment. The brain isn't just leaking chemicals, it's performing a massive, simultaneous calculation to predict what happens next. This internal representation of the world, the mathematical sum of all those firing wires, is what we experience as God. Human intellect, consciousness, and identity are ultimately just the math of physics. We are simply unthinking atoms, highly organized by the laws of nature,